All right, you got to tell me. I know nobody can see this except if they're watching YouTube, but who did the painting behind you? It's fantastic. I love it.
That is Robert Cole Caples, Nevada's probably most prominent modern painter from the 1920s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And that's the kind of thing, because Nevada, by the way, I call it Nevada. Is that correct? Or do you say Nevada?
No, Nevada.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
what I always thought. Yeah, it's Nevada.
In fact, we might make fun of you if you say Nevada.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it'd be like Bernalillo instead of Bernalillo. I get it. So, but as I was about to say, is Nevada, one of the things it seems like you guys are really doing is trying to promote the art of Nevada artists. Is that a true statement?
I think that's a partially true statement. Absolutely. We, believe strongly in our regional artists, but what we try to do is to place their work into a broader global context, because we think that the work that they produce and the various influences upon it, have resonance outside of our region because of Nevada's sort of unique history. There's so many, things that happen in Nevada that resonate beyond the state. And I can give you a whole slew of examples. Yes.
Well, first I'll just introduce everybody to you. You're Ann Wolfe, and you are the curator of the Nevada Museum of Art, correct? In Reno, Nevada.
That's right. And I'm the chief curator and associate director.
An associate director, yes. The Andrea and John C. Dean, correct? Executive.
The Andrea and John C. Dean family, chief curator and associate director.
All right, there we go. Well, I know of your work. I know who you are. I've even given you, I think, a painting maybe or two in the past for your Tahoe show, and maybe another one, which was a fantastic show, by the way. So we have you here, and we're going to talk about a couple of things. You've got some shows coming up and some shows that you've done, one of which is right close to my heart, which is going to be your Sagebrush and Solitude, Maynard Dixon, Nevada, I guess that's correct.
That's right. That's an exhibition I'm working on for 2024.
And are you co-curating that with Don Haggerty, or is Don Haggerty the guest curator?
Well, I'm curating the exhibition on Maynard Dixon. Don is stepping in as the lead scholar of the living, who's been decades. And then we have two other scholars who are going to be contributing material for the catalog. One of them is Dr. Ann Keniston, who's at the University of Nevada, Reno, who'll be writing on Dixon's poetry, sort of from a new perspective. And another scholar is John Ott at James Madison University, who'll be writing specifically on Dixon's representations of laborers and race in the Hoover Dam construction series.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating.
So it's really team that's coming together, and Rizzoli is very excited about the book that we'll be publishing with them. This will be another in a long line of publications that we've done with Rizzoli over the years.
Do you know how many of the Boulder Dam pieces you're going to have in the show yet?
Let's see. I think they're somewhere in the mid-20s that are out there, and we've got about 10 right now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. Have you managed to track down Men Are Tired yet?
We do know the location of Men Are Tired. Every day brings a new discovery in
great
work on this exhibition. So had some great discoveries yesterday, and we're finding more paintings every day. So
yeah, that's fantastic. And when we'll get to that a little bit, but I'm just so excited because of the any kind of time you have a major Dixon show, which this is going to be. I'm excited to find out about it. And that's going to open in 2024?
Yeah, that exhibition will run from March 2nd through July 28th of 2024.
March through July. Great. Yeah, well, I'll be definitely coming to that. And also, you might tell the individual that's working on the poetry aspect that I do have a lot of poetry in my own collection that I put together over the years of Dixon's poetry that he may or may not know of. So I don't know if it'll help him or if he's already written his manuscript and is off to the press, but you can let him know.
Yeah, I will mention that to Dr. Keniston. I think she'd
Yes.
be very interested.
Oh, yeah, that'd be, and I'd love to talk to her too. That's going to be a really interesting component. So, anyway, back to you, which is really what we're here for. So, one of the things I wanted to promote the museum, but I also want to know a little bit more about yourself. And it sounds kind of like you have an interesting, as most people do, interesting history. Now, you grew up in California on a orchard, right? Was that right? Is that a fair statement?
That's right. I grew up on an apricot farm in what was then the small town of Brentwood, which is located about halfway between Stockton and Berkeley Walnut Creek. Obviously, now it's a growing suburb, but that is where I was born and raised, and lived for much of my life.
And so, was your father, that was a family farm, I assume?
Yeah, I come from a family of farmers on both sides of my family. My father's side, the Wolfe family, started the farming in Brentwood in the 1936, and my mother's side, Italian families, came earlier than that to that area.
And so the 1936 family, that was the Wolfe family?
That's right.
And so was that when he came to California, was 36?
Oh, you're going deep into the history.
Oh,
My
yeah.
family, the Wolfe family, actually came to California from Ohio in the late 1890s and settled in San Jose, California. And they were a family of architects and general contractors. My great uncle was Frank Wolfe, who designed many of the craftsmen and prairie style homes throughout all of the historic neighborhoods in San Jose.
Oh, wow.
In Santa Clara.
That's very cool. I wonder if they would have ever met Maynard Dixon. They came there in what, the 1890s?
I've
Possibly.
never encountered any overlap there, but it would be great.
Wouldn't make sense if they were especially involved in architect. They would have known each other, I would have thought, for sure. I think that makes a natural sense to me. So you grow up on, and one of the things I like to do, and I don't know if you've listened to any of the podcasts, but I do like to get a little bit of the back history of you, kind of understand how you ended up as a curator. So when you were growing up on this farm's the right word to call it, or you call it a, yes, farm?
Yeah,
okay.
An apricot farm.
Apricot farm. Were you interested in art as well when you grew up as a little kid?
Oh, I had some amateur artists in my family, but I think my real first introduction to art per se came sort of more through a historical lens, and my father, who became interested in a minor way in California art in the 80s and would take us down to the Butterfield auction in San Francisco, and got to experience some of those previews and auctions, and sort of just stayed with me, but I was never really a large presence. And then I did study art history when I went on to Santa Clara University.
And so when your dad goes down to take you to Bonham's, and I guess it was Butterfields at that time, Butterfield, was he buying art too, or did he just like the process and enjoyed the entertainment aspect of it?
Well, I think at the time, we were looking at paintings that were representative of the place where we lived. The kind of Central California obviously was a sort of a thoroughfare for a lot of artists moving back and forth between the city and the Sierra. And so it was nice to see the place where we all live represented in paintings, visual art.
And did he end up getting some for your home? Were you surrounded with art in your house?
We did acquire some paintings. I don't usually talk too much about that, but yes, we did acquire some.
Good. Well, I think it's important, right?
Very modest, modest collection.
Yeah. Well, I think my parents bought paintings from like art fairs and things that were like regional art fairs in Clovis, New Mexico type of things, or Portales, that probably cost $50 to $75. But at the same time, I personally remember looking at those images and having them around the walls and really appreciating the fact that there was art in my house, even though I wouldn't have had a clue what it, value or who did it or any of that. But where I grew up, we had no museums, really, none. And so where you grew up, your closest museums you would have to go to town, right?
Yeah, we would mostly go to San Francisco and the Bay Area to visit a museum or during our travels. But it was really once I was at Santa Clara University studying art history and my discovery of the Thesis Museum on campus, where I worked first as a security guard, that really sort of opened my eyes to the potentials of museums, and potentially, specifically their focus there on California history was of interest to me. And, their mission history and mission past, and how they worked with Indigenous communities to tell those stories. And so it was really that that kind of led me to art history in graduate school at the University of Southern California. And that was a time when, Los Angeles was really, really hopping. It was a hot place for contemporary art. And the 2 years that I spent there was really, transformational, and me understanding the art world, realizing that I didn't love the contemporary art world, that I tended more towards art history and California art history. And then, that eventually led me back to the San Jose Museum of Art, where I was. So the first exhibition that I did there, major exhibition of the San Jose Museum of Art and book, was called Suburban Escape, The Art of California Sprawl, which is really a return to sort of interpreting and understanding what was happening throughout California, particularly our family's farm, which was now being surrounded on four sides by suburban development and expansion. And I realized that there had been a slew of artists from the 1940s to the present, looking at that type of suburban development and changing landscape. And that was very much of interest to me. And I've always tended towards sort of telling the story of these kind of art historical arcs. So how do we march through time, looking at how artists, over time have looked at a particular subject or at a particular place or a particular icon. And so that first book, called Suburban Escape, The Art of California Sprawl, I did with Lucy Lepard, and that was a really sort of pivotal publication for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not only a pivotal publication, but it really struck home for who you were and what you were. I mean, that really, which is, of course, the great thing if you connect in that form. When you came up, I assume you came up with that idea for that because of what was happening in your own lives and your family's farm.
Yeah, it was a very personal, personal exhibition, personal thesis. It was based on, identifying trends and sort of a history of the strand of California art history that had not been looked at before. And, I was really gratified that book was used and continues to be used in a lot of art history classes in the Bay Area, land use, urban planning studies. It's a very interdisciplinary focused book. And that's the book that really led me to the Nevada Museum of Art and really focused photography collection, which is called the Altered Landscape Collection.
Was your family farm still functioning at that time when you did that show?
My family's farm still functions. It's evolved over the years, but they do still grow cherries, tree fruit, other deciduous fruits, and I try to get there as often as possible to reconnect with our customers and our fruit stands and our retail operations. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you do...
But, I think really more than anything, kind of the blend of that rural upbringing and working in the art world keeps things real for me. It allows me to really connect with our communities in Northern Nevada in a different and unique way that a lot of, curators might not bring the same perspectives.
Yeah, and I would think environmentally, and I know your museum is very much has that bent to it. That makes sense, right? I mean, you come from Mother Earth, the ground. I mean, that's where your soul is. That's where your family's soul is. And you have your museum spends time and an energy on that area, correct?
That's right. We have a number of collections dedicated to how artists interpret the changing landscape, respond to issues of land use, other issues related to the changing environment. We're home to the Center for Art and Environment, which is a major research center that collects archives dedicated to that very thing. So yes, it seems to be a perfect fit in many ways. As we've developed the collection over the last 15 years of both our art collections as well as our archive collections, it's sort of the niche that we've carved out for ourselves as an institution.
Hmm. And land art is something that you've been associated with too, right? The project that was out in the basin near Las Vegas. What's it called? Seven Mountains? Is that the title of it?
Seven Magic Mountains is a major public artwork that we commissioned at the Nevada Museum of Art a few years back by the Swiss artist Ugo Rondinone, and it's a large series of totem-like sculptures just about 15 miles south of Las Vegas on the I-5. It's an important piece. It's visited by about 1,000 people daily to this day, and we still operate and steward that installation. But it's also just not a far cry from Gene Dry Lake, where Michael Heiser created many of his early, land art pieces.
Right.
And, Nevada's home to many Michael Heiser artworks,
Right.
Many artworks by other land artists. And so we really have embraced that art historical tradition in the state of Nevada. And that's a big part of who we are and what we collect. And a big part of our last Art and Environment Conference, which is a triennial conference that we host. And that one in last year, 2 years ago, was focused on land art, past, present, and future.
Why do you think Nevadans are so interested in that area? I mean, I have my guesses why. It makes perfect sense, same as Arizonians, I think. But why do you think they see land art maybe more fluidly than other places might?
Well, I think, the sort of early impetus to create land art in the state of Nevada was really an external impetus. It was artists who were working in New York or internationally who saw the desert as, quote, a blank canvas, an open space for creativity. Current thinking, current scholarship around land art acknowledges that the desert is absolutely not a blank canvas, but it's a rich ecological resource home to indigenous people for millennia. And so I think we've seen land art evolve over the decades from artists who have come to kind of attempt to make that singular gesture to artists who are far more engaged in the many layers of meeting the land and these open spaces possess. And so it's sort of that arc again of how we experience land, how we understand land, how we think about these places. That is a very important part of our study at the museum and the Center for Art and Environment.
And you also have a good relationship and have embraced, it sounds like, the 27 different cultures, indigenous cultures that are in the basin of that area. And that seems like that is a kind of a natural segue with the land art as well. It all seems to kind of work together in some
I
fashion.
think that's fair to say. I think the Great Basin region, the indigenous artists of the Great Basin region have overlooked for many decades.
Agreed.
Primarily because it's such an expansive place and artists are working in very rural, very remote areas. And I learned last week that we now have 28 federally recognized tribes. So we're up from 27 to 28, which is exciting. But I think, it was really 15 years ago that I made a commitment alongside the museum to reconnect with a lot of our indigenous contemporary artists, visited many of their studios in person in these very remote rural areas. And we began a series of exhibitions and books dedicated to artists from the Great Basin region. The first was Jack Malott. The next was Jim Lamar. Coming up is Ben Alec. And then out of that first exhibition in 2015 that I co-curated with Ben Alec, a Northern Paiute artist, arose a group, a collective called the Great Basin Native Artists Collective. And it was really great to see the museum be the impetus for that collective organization of these indigenous artists. And, that's led to just many, many opportunities and collaborative opportunities and public programs. And it's a very rich part of our program. And it's led now to what we call the Indigenous Arts Future Fund, which is a campaign, a sort of a tool that will assure that the museum's commitment to these indigenous communities and artists really remains in perpetuity as a part of the institutional vision.
And how does that work exactly? on the in perpetuity? What do they do to make sure that happens?
Well, the Indigenous Arts Futures Fund is more or less an endowment that outlines a number of overarching visions for our work with Indigenous communities and artists. We don't only collect Indigenous work from Nevada, and this is what I mean when I say how do we place work from Nevada into this broader global context. We have a collecting area and a collecting focus that we call the Greater West. And by the Greater West is a super region that we've defined as stretching all the way from Alaska down to Patagonia and from the American Intermountain West to Australia. And we're home actually to one of the top 3 collections of Aboriginal painting and sculpture in the United States as part of our permanent collection. And so we're very interested.
How did that happen?
We've worked with a number of key collectors throughout the United States who recognized that within this Greater West region, there's similarities that need to be kind of teased out. And if you think of comparative literatures, that's very much the basis for this Greater West collection. The Greater West has a lot of commonalities, right? Australia, New Zealand, Alaska, the American West, they have these rich indigenous cultures for millennia. They have very dynamic geographies that result in rich natural resources. Think mining and excavation, and that those rich natural resources lead to legacies of colonization over time, legacies that are similar in Australia that they are in Alaska, and similar that they are in Arizona and Nevada. And then these major extractive industries. So we collect a lot of art related to extraction, visualization of how people have extracted resources from these expanses, and then all of the contentious politics that results right from the collision of those cultures, or sort of this major military presence in all of those regions as well is something that we're interested in. So our collections, our thinking is it's a very interdisciplinary kind of collection and vision that we've laid out. And I forget what your question was, but traditional landscapes fall into that rubric, as well as contemporary landscapes, as well as photography depicting the changing landscape and all of the sculpture and everything that falls within that thematic focus.
And is that even a mission? Is that like a mission statement to collect this greater Western and art form, whether it's related to art or extraction, or politics, all that? Is that kind of a, really when you think of your museum, okay, that in a nutshell is kind of our mission?
That's one of our collecting buckets. That's what we call the Robert S. and Dorothy J. Kaiser Greater West Collection. And it dovetails with our Carol Frank Buck Altered Landscape Photography Collection. Both of those are funded or endowed collections. And it also dovetails with our archive collection. So, and then we have a contemporary collection that often overlaps with environmental themes. So on the collecting side of things, absolutely, those are themes. It's a very thematic collection, very, again, interdisciplinary, and those are some of that's the area in which we focus our collecting.
And
not necessarily our exhibitions. Our exhibitions are often much broader and appeal to various audiences in our community.
Sure.
And beyond.
I love Native American art. Obviously, I deal in it in both contemporary and antiquity type things, more from the historic point of view. But what kind of Native American arts have you, as a museum, collected? I hear the Aboriginal one, which is the 3rd largest collection. Is that out of Australia? Was that what you said?
Yeah, so we were given a very generous gift from 2 collectors, Deborah and Dennis Scholl, who split their collection between the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Kluge Ruig Museum, and the Nevada Museum of Art. And we have an ongoing relationship with those museums. It's sort of a shared collection, but we are home to a third of that collection, and we're very proud of that. And it's not just about collection. The next step is also, how do we activate the collection? How do we activate the artworks as well as the archives? And what that means is, how do we become involved in supporting cultural exchanges between the living artists in these regions of the Greater West. How do we work with Indigenous artists out of the Southwest? We just did a large show with Rose B. Simpson from the Santa Fe area. How do we bring her to Reno or bring her to Las Vegas and connect her with Indigenous artists to encourage sort of a shared, shared conversation and all of the potential that comes from artists engaging with other artists beyond where they live, but looking at a more sort of regional and global super region kind of context.
With art being somewhat of the glue that connects them. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah, I think that's important. I think a lot of museums are finally understanding that this is the kind of things that you need to do, that you may have a curator, a wonderful collection of material, but if it's just there statically and not getting viewed in a more cultural sense, you're losing a lot of what art is, right? I mean, half the time when I'm picking up a jar, a bowl, my thought is, wow, look at the hands that made this, look at the design elements, maybe the wear on it, all the generations of little hands that, use the ladle to get the food or the water out of it, and how that's interpreted today. So, yeah, bravo. I'm glad you guys are doing that.
And I think in terms of the more historical material, baskets and things like that, we have a very modest collection, and we're very mindful of any acquisitions we make in that area. We have a large collection of Southwestern pottery as well. But to be real stewards of those collections, baskets as well as pottery, we recognize that we need to engage the makers of those collections and to do regular, collection reviews of those bodies of work to really honor the makers of those, and so that they're not just seen as objects or artifacts, but really as cultural belongings that have meaning beyond putting them in a display case. And so that's the real hard work of collaboration and community development and working with our Indigenous communities and, really having trusted partners, not just in Reno and our Indigenous communities, but throughout the state of Nevada and this super region.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any Dotzalali baskets, do you know, in your collection?
We do not in our collection. The majority of the Dotzalali baskets in Nevada are held by the Nevada State Museum in Carson City.
Which is an amazing collection. I've seen that collection. It's insane.
When we organized the exhibition in 2015 called Tahoe, A Visual History,
right,
that overtook the entire museum. And of course, there was a 400-page book, 9-pound book that came along with it. But the first third of that book was dedicated to Indigenous art of the Lake Tahoe region. And it was in that exhibition that we had brought together for the first time more Dotzalali baskets in one place than ever before, and Washoe baskets. It was truly a breathtaking part of the exhibition.
Yeah, I remember when you did that. That was an amazing exhibit and way overdue people don't recognize that, except I think sometimes regionally, and as it's one of those things that, it holds its own anywhere where you go. Those kind of baskets, the mastery of those weavers is just amazing, quite frankly. So now what are you currently, projects are you guys working on?
We have a lot going on at the museum. Of course, I'm working on exhibitions myself. We talked a little bit about the Maynard Dixon exhibition, Sagebrush and Solitude for 2024. I'm following that up in 2024 with an exhibition that's a little bit out of the box for an art museum. But again, I like to look at the sort of these historical histories of Nevada. And so that exhibition will be called Sea Dragons of Nevada's Ancient Oceans.
I saw that and I wondered, what in the world is that, exhibit going to be about?
We're working with our lead paleontologist out of Bonn, Germany, who's the world's foremost expert on Ichthyosaur fossils. He's been working in the Nevada desert for over 30 years in the Augusta Mountains, and a designer out of Berlin, Germany, who's going to be working on the exhibition design. And basically, we're bringing together for the first time all of the Ichthyosaur fossils that have been excavated in Nevada since the 1930s. Many of them are tucked away in buildings underground in, UC Berkeley and Los Angeles Museum, Natural History Museum, never seen before. So huge skulls and exciting materials that, really deserve to be shown close to their place of origin. These are, in many ways, like artifacts that have been excavated by scientists and taken far away from where they originally were discovered. And so we thought it would be important to bring those together and also look at sort of, the ichthyosaur in the popular imagination of Nevada. It's Nevada's state fossil. Everybody knows ichthyosaur in Nevada. There's a great beer, the Icky beer, Icky brew, that's named after the animal. And so I thought I'd take a little break from art and just do something that's really popular and will be well received by the community. But that will be the last exhibition to take place in what we call our current facility. Our current building is located in downtown Reno. It's now about 20 years old, designed by Will Bruder out of Scottsdale. It's a great facility that's 65,000 square feet. And right after that Ichthyosaur exhibition, we will have completed an expansion of our building that's set to open in 2025. Right adjacent, it'll actually connect up with our current building, and that expansion will front what we call California Avenue, which is a nice main street in downtown Reno, and it will be a 50,000 square foot education and research center with a beautiful library, art and design bookstore, new permanent collection galleries, brand new temporary changing exhibition galleries, and a beautiful rooftop garden where all of the plantings will be selected in collaboration with Indigenous artists related to sort of basket weaving and materials related to those traditions. So we're really excited about that, and that's a whole second part of what we all have going on right now in Reno.
And is that new building, will it relate I'm sure it will, to the original building, which I found fascinating, that building is, takes a volcanic butte basically as its inspiration, right? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, because I'd never seen a building that had been done that way, not only structurally how it looks, but even how the stone, the outside looks like the environment.
It's a really unique building that Will Bruder designed just about 20 years ago now. And you're right, it takes the form of sort of a black formation that is rooted in northern Nevada's geology. It's actually based on a rock formation not far from Reno, about 2 hours northeast in the Black Rock Desert, where Burning Man occurs every year. And so that building has been a beautiful metaphor for the work that happens inside the building, our focus on art and environment, our thematic collecting areas, our archival collections. But we decided we wanted to be respectful of the building because it is so unique, and we brought Will Bruder back to design the expansion. And so, yeah, you'll definitely see some similarities in the design and the expansion.
And the plants that you're putting on top, the native plants, will the native basket weavers be able to collect and use those plants for their baskets?
Yeah, that's all yet to be worked out, and it's really what their vision will be. And we're just starting and having those conversations. So, but yes, we'd anticipate that that would be a place that's made available for that. And, also in terms of providing access to our basket collections, it's really important that weavers, scholars, researchers, educators can come and see these baskets, hold these baskets, understand what they are. We're not about locking baskets up behind vitrines. They'll obviously be on display, but how do we really, allow these baskets to have the life that they deserve and be a part of this community?
Right. And so this educational center, this will also be an area. Is there an area in it that you're going to focus as far as maybe Nevada history or, even Reno history? Is there anything? So if I was a researcher, I'd go, that's the place where I need to go if I want to do research. Like for Dixon, it's the Sacramento State Library. That's where the biggest amount of archives, whoever's writing this book was, I'm sure, spent time in that library, just going through their paperwork. I know I did when I, published my book. So will your
Yeah,
museum?
so the focus of the Education and Research Center, the Research Center we call the Center for Art and Environment, and it's not as specific as Reno or Nevada. Again, it's a very interdisciplinary, thematic collection of archives, many of which are already available on our website. But these are materials dealing with issues throughout the West and the super region. So, issues related to water, extraction, extreme environments, similarities between Antarctica and the Arctic, and arid desert regions like the Southwest and the Great Basin, issues related to military presence, all of those sort of themes that I developed earlier. And so it's a very unique collection of archives, and we want to make those accessible not just to scholars who might be writing a book, but how do those materials, sometimes they're artist sketches, sometimes they're notebooks, sometimes they are small sculptural maquettes. How do we make those materials available to our K through 12 educators? How do we integrate them into lesson plans and curriculum and serve as a resource still in the Northern Nevada and entire state-wide educational community? That's a big part of our commitment to education. You'll see grow even more through this Education and Research Center. But so it's not the idea of building a library or a research center that's sort of this quiet and staid place. We want it to be lively, we want it to be accessible, and we want, everyone with lots of different backgrounds to be able to access this material and make it relevant to their lives and the work that they do.
Yeah, and to kids, right? That sounds
And to
like
kids as well.
big component of this is going to be allowing, school kids to come and visit, which I think is the most critical component for art and developing of art and artists, is to be exposed. And if you don't expose these kids, they won't ever get ignited. And so I love the fact that that's going to be part of it sounds like the part of the core mission.
We are the Nevada Museum of Art is actually only accredited art museum in the state of Nevada. And so we take our educational mission very seriously. We service not only in person, about 8,000 school children each year, students each year, but we also provide professional development credits to educators throughout the state of Nevada. And what COVID taught us was that we could now do this virtually as well. So we serve not only Northern Nevada, but the southern parts of the state, Las Vegas and Clark County as well. And our education initiatives are strong and robust and very well respected throughout the educational community in the state.
Yeah. And so what other major museums are there in Nevada? So you're the only accredited one, but I assume there's one in Las Vegas. I've never been to it. I assume they have one.
Well, there's not actually an art museum in Las Vegas. So the
Bellagio,
University of Nevada,
right?
What was that?
The Bellagio, right?
The University of Nevada, Las Vegas is home to the Barrick Art Museum. I believe they just changed their name to the Barrick Art Museum, and also the Donna Bean Gallery. The University of Nevada, Reno is home to the Lilly Art Museum, and the Shepherd Gallery. And then in terms of the state museums, we have the Nevada State Museum in Carson City and the Nevada State Museum in Las Vegas, and then the various historical societies that are state run as well.
And Reno is really blowing up, right, as a city? I mean, just the amount of people that are coming in.
We're seeing a huge population boom in northern Nevada and throughout Nevada. Much of that over the years has been in large part driven by the massive development that's taking place just east of Reno in the Tahoe-Reno Industrial Complex, where we see the arrival of places like Tesla and Switch and Google and blockchains and kind of Silicon Valley's back door or garage. And so Reno's a very different place than it was 15 years ago. It's just a lot of growth right now, which is exciting for the museum. And it's exciting for the museum to step up and to be able to serve all of those new communities and residents throughout the state.
Yes, and so with all this growth in tech, which I've kind of followed, I know it's just massive. will the museum also, do you see in the future, okay, we're going to do, shows on NFTs, right? Things that are more tech related to, reach those people that are more interested in that component potentially?
Well, I can't speak to that specifically, but part of this sort of focus on the environment, this definition of environment for us is natural environments, built environments, and virtual environments. And so this virtual environment also often has a sort of a technological grounding. I don't know if you read about the project we did with the artist Trevor Paglin about, I forget, 2018, where we worked with him to launch a non-functional satellite sculpture into space. It was a very sort of a high-risk undertaking, but again, it engaged that tech community, that community in a way that also brought it back to sort of Nevada's history of military testing and Nevada as a testing ground and a place for experimentation and risk. And that ties in a lot to, what's happening out at the industrial center with these big corporations that are coming. Nevada has always been known as a place where you can take risks, so you can take big risks and you can try new things. And I think it's fair to say that there's a little bit of that embedded in the DNA of the Nevada Museum of Art itself.
I think so. Sounds like it.
We look to also those huge corporations and the footprint that they're leaving upon the Northern Nevada landscape and the water issues that brings, and
Right.
who are the artists that are coming all the time from around the world to visit what's happening out there. Probably the most well-known being the architect Rem Koolhaas, based out of Rotterdam. He spent about 3 years with us in a series of think tank sessions studying the Reno Tahoe Industrial Center and developing a thesis that became the basis of an exhibition at the Guggenheim a couple of years ago. And his thesis was essentially that the changes that are taking place globally are now not happening in cities, but they're happening in sort of rural countryside, what he calls countryside areas, these places that are remote, where you would not think that massive change is taking place. But, when you think about all of the data that's being stored in Northern Nevada and Southern Nevada, and the Tesla Gigafactory and the battery factory that's out there, these are major industries that are changing the world, that are essentially happening in the margins. And so Rem Koolhaas, in his work with us and visiting those places, developed this as part of his thesis that was on view at the Guggenheim just a couple of years ago. So really exciting. Northern Nevada is a really exciting place to be at a lot of levels, not just regionally and locally, but because what's happening in Nevada, again, has this larger global relevance. And that's why we host artists that come from around the world and scholars and researchers who are looking at all of these very unique things that take place in the West.
Have you seen, is there an art scene that's happening more and more in the Reno, Tahoe area with more gallerists and moving in?
I think we have a very vibrant art community. Galleries come and go. Of course, the Strummel Gallery is a mainstay and a good partner of the museum over the years. I think it's fair to say that Northern Nevada's arts community has been very influenced over the years by Burning Man. And that's a really important creative community that not only comes together once a year on the playa of the Black Rock Desert, but that also maybe have chosen to stay in Northern Nevada. And so we have a lot of public art that the city has supported that's actually been displayed on the playa as part of Burning Man over the years. And we absolutely can't deny the influence of Burning Man on sort of Northern Nevada's cultural landscape. A couple of years ago, we organized an exhibition called City of Dust, The Evolution of Burning Man. We're home to the largest archive of Burning Man and materials related to the founding of Burning Man. And that's a show that then went on to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. So, I think the impact of Burning Man can't be denied. And, it's just an important part of the cultural dynamic in Northern Nevada.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just from what you've told me, there's this whole push-pull of all sorts of things that are, creatively coming together in that area. Burning Man, clearly, I mean, it gets so much publicity. And quite frankly, I've never been, but I want to go, and just to see the public art that they put together, some of that stuff is just insanely amazing. So, I mean, I can see how it would, have to be a part of that, dialogue. Yet I still love seeing something like your 1920s, 30s painting behind you, the historical components. So, you have your work cut out for you, I would think, juggling all these different components.
Well, I think it's fair to say that we are true to our mission. The mission of the Nevada Museum of Art is that we are a museum of ideas.
Nice.
Every idea that comes to the table, if we feel it can be realized, it gets a chance at the table. We're a very open door institution. We listen to our community. We try to push our community into new ways of thinking about our place and where we are in the world, and really the significance of Nevada. Nevada's for a long time had a reputation as being a cultural backwater, a place where there's no art in Nevada. That makes no sense. And that's been a big a part of my vision as well, to help this state define an art history for itself. And so that's a big part of the scholarship and the publications that we've chosen to produce over the years, to help Nevada, gain the respect that I think it deserves.
Yeah, well, I think you're making an inroad to that because of the exhibits you're doing, quite frankly. And I love the fact this is a museum of ideas. Have you trademarked that? That's such a great tag.
Actually, it's trademarked and copyrighted.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it should be. It's really a great tagline for, your museum, and it sets the tone of what you're trying to do. So
yeah, we were very honored, right in the middle of COVID, to have been tapped by the Mellon Foundation out of New York City as one of 12 museums to receive some unexpected funding through an initiative that they call the Art Museums Futures Fund. And we really felt that at that moment acknowledged the risk-taking that we are known for, and the work that we do within our community and within our diverse communities locally, but also how we try to connect that to a broader world. And so we were really proud of that, and just think it was a good endorsement of the good work that our entire team does here.
Yeah, that's nice when you get recognized in that form, and that shows that you're making inroads. I mean, you are basically Nevada's art museum to some extent. Really, you're the only accredited one, for sure.
That's right.
That's a true statement, and a museum of ideas. So, as we finish up, how do you see your role progressing over, say, the next 10 years, in the museum? I know that's a big, broad question, and even maybe not even a fair one, but just to kind of get your idea of how you see things unfolding in, a mid to long range for the museum.
Well, I think we're going through a tremendous period of expansion, transition. It's really exciting. We're lucky to work with an incredibly visionary CEO, David Walker, who does not come from the museum field. He comes from a very diverse background. He is an incredible leader for the institution. We work throughout our staff, not in sort of siloed departments, but collectively at all times. So Curatorial works with education, works with our research center, and it's a very exciting, as non-hierarchical place that you can get. And so I think that there's just a lot of satisfaction that that brings to the team. It's a very different type of museum that we have that really has been encouraged under David Walker's direction. And I think that we'll see what this new research and education center brings. It's an incredibly exciting time to be a part of that, and we're all just waiting to develop the new programs and the new initiatives that sort of fall under that umbrella, and we'll do that together. And I think you've probably noticed by talking with me that I'm not one of those curators that I don't consider myself really consider myself an institutional curator. I care deeply about our community. I care deeply about our state and our museum, and how the museum is seen within that ecosystem. And so I'm very happy where I have been and where I will remain. So
Yeah, they're fortunate to have somebody that's been there for so long. Did you get there in 2005? Is that when you showed up?
I read 2006, and right around the same time as David Walker, right
Oh,
around the same time as a number of our key staff members. And so I think when you have that continuity within a museum staff and the opportunity to develop and realize a vision, it makes a big difference in what you can accomplish.
yes, I agree. I do. I think it's very important for the continuity of a museum to be able to move forward. And, just the public and people like myself and people that maybe trustees and, donors, they like to know that the people that are there are going to be there, you know, 10 years from now or even 5 years from now, especially if they're, going to give money and time and or collections to a museum. And it sounds like you guys have that all in place. I've always been impressed with, the shows that you've done, and I'm looking really forward to the Dixon Museum, Dixon show. Could be a museum. Be a great place for a museum, actually. It would be. Dixon loved Nevada.
Great idea.
Yeah, it would be actually. I mean, it's a perfect place, quite frankly. I mean, it's close to where he grew up. It's close to, where he lived. It's close to his heart. So many times he went to Nevada when there was issues, whether it's, getting divorced from Dorothea Lange in 1935 or getting married to Edith Hamlin in 1937. Both, were in Nevada. I mean, he loved the place. But I do really look forward to seeing that show, which opens up in just a couple of years. So,
And I was just going to mention, what a real treat and honor it is to work with Don Haggerty.
oh yeah, he's
A
great.
lot of the projects that I organize are in collaboration with longtime scholars in their fields. I'm thinking of all of the work I've done with Alfred Harrison of the North Point Gallery over the years, and Catherine Fowler, Nevada's anthropologist. And these individuals are it's beyond treasures. The amount of knowledge and wisdom that they can provide. And I give credit to all of them for, what I've been able to accomplish, because it's through working with people like Don and Alfred that, hopefully some of that knowledge is passed on, and it can become a part of sort of our, collective art history.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it was wonderful that you were able to get Don to do this because he is the foremost Dixon expert. And, when I talked to Don about it, he goes, yeah, this is my swan song. So, I hope it isn't, but, he's, I think, 87 maybe. So shout out to Don Haggerty. So we look forward to seeing this show, and a shout out to you, Ann Wolfe. Thank you very much for taking the time to come on. And we look forward to watching the progress of the museum and the big opening. That's in 2025. That's the big expansion, right? So
That's the current date we are planning for at this time.
Good. Well, I will see you when you're at the museum show. I will try to show up for your opening, and anything we can help you with, let us know.
Okay, well, thanks. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. And of course, come to Nevada, and all of our contact information is right on the website. We'd love to meet you in person.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much. And we will talk soon.
Okay.
Yes. Call me when you need more info on the Dixon stuff. I'm still working on my end on that. We need to keep in touch on that.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.